It's better to have a US presence than a very short, small Danish presence, because we cannot compare Denmark with the United States. They are becoming a global power, but they are not yet. Maybe it will take 20 years or more. And in the meantime, Russia and China will have to already taken over Greenland in a way or in another.
Do you think eventually Denmark is going to cave and they'll be willing to sell it, or do you think it'll be like given to the US on lease?
In the long term, if this area, the Arctic area, is controlled more by the West, it will be difficult for China to bring, what they wanted to bring, fooling the Europeans with the money.
Welcome to FO Talks. With me is Maurizio Geri. He's a senior strategic analyst in international security, and he has been in the field for more than 2 decades. He is also a reservist officer in the Italian Navy as a foreign policy advisor. Today, he's joining us from Europe. Maurizio, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Greetings from Rome. All is good here, apart some rain, but we get used to the climate change.
Right. I remember the last time I spoke to you, you were in the United States, and we spoke about Russia and China. But today, we're going to talk about U.S. President Donald Trump, but more importantly, Greenland. So right off the bat, why are we talking about Greenland? Why is it so significant?
Well, as I said, now there is something in the planet Earth that is called climate change. It's called global warming, and is actually changing the geography that we saw until now. So the Arctic is increasingly an open space where the so-called great power competition, the current strategic international system, is facing between the Russian Chinese, attempt to dominate the area and the American attempt to maintain the control of the area, because we have to understand that the grand strategy of US, something that the European Union doesn't have, has been always, since the birth of the United States, the avoidance of some rival taking over either the eastern or western part of the Eurasian continent. But now the invasion of the territory of the United States can come not only from east, not only from west, but also from the north. And until now was not a case. And this has to be very important, understood in the world, because when Trump speaks about national security, he speaks about exactly this. And it's not only an invasion of, via sea, but can be also an invasion through the missiles, which is why his plan of creating the so-called Golden Dome that will protect all the Western Hemisphere, and indirectly also we can say Europe, because even if it's not covering Europe, the dome in its first, creation in the future will be for sure also supporting what are the European countries inside NATO, because NATO still exists. NATO is not only US and Europe. Let's remember that there are countries that are outside the EU and European continent in itself, like Canada or Turkey, and also countries that are outside the EU, like Great Britain. And as we saw recently with the meeting between the Secretary General and Trump, the escalation has been diffused and the internal threats has been reduced a lot.
Yes, even the tariffs are now off. So I want to, what I want to ask is, and I want our viewers to understand is, why is only Trump pushing for Greenland? It's not like, I mean, he wanted it in his first term as well. Now he's back again in the White House, and he's really after Greenland. Why weren't any of the other US presidents so open in their demand for Greenland? Were they even interested? Or has this policy shift really come only from the Trump administration?
I think it's been gradual, but with the Trump administration has been pushed a lot for one important reason, is that Trump has an attitude that is what we call it unpredictable, but also transactional approach to the international relations. So he wants to threaten the maximum escalation in order to get as much as possible as a result in its following negotiations. So that's his style, and it comes from a strategy. It comes from the strategy that is a game theory, and even if it seems that he's doing that by chance or because of his past, business life, in reality, the decision-making process in the United States presidency has been always fed by thousands of think tanks and by many people around the president. So what I'm referring here, because I'm a political scientist, I'm, as you said, an analyst, I'm not a journalist, because nowadays many analysts are just former journalists and they comment events, but I try to put also theories behind and the evidence and scientific evidence. And so the game theory, the prisoner dilemma always explained us that when you want to have the best result for you individually, you need to defect instead of cooperate. And that's what Trump does. Defection means that you accuse the other of being responsible, and the result in the game theory is a maximum result for you because the other could cooperate. Now, in this case, the international systems and the international law has been violated not by democracies before, but by dictatorships. And not only with the invasion of Ukraine, but also with other illicit actions. And so what Trump does is just take off the gloves like Xi Jinping and Putin did, but he's still accountable to the people. Again,
Right.
The logic of political survival of Bueno de Mesquita explain us that the difference here is that the dictatorial regimes, even if they punch under the belt, they are accountable to an elite, while the democracies, they are accountable to the people. And so when the people realize that their representative maybe is going against their interest, they will put him down. And that's what can happen also with Trump. So let's say that Trump escalated that because of his attitude, but also because of responding to what Russia and China were doing, because they are expanding their presence in the Arctic. Let's remember that according to UNCLOS, the UN, law of the sea, only 5 nations can exploit the Arctic resources, which are Russia, Canada, US, Norway, and Denmark. And they have their, through the exclusive economic zones. But then there is an Arctic Council also that exists since the 90s that try to solve the dispute in the Arctic. And these include the countries of the Northern Europe, of the Scandinavia, and also China has been granted an observer status. So China, we have to remember that they have their own polar Silk Road. The Xi Jinping when he launched the Silk Road, launched also the polar Silk Road in 2016. He considered itself as a near Arctic state. Because as I said, the most important thing here is the global warming. That is changing not only the reality of the Arctic, but the reality, for example, also of the Eurasian continent and the Russian Siberia, which is why many Chinese are moving for some cooperation that they are having these two regimes from the China nation state to the Russian nation state. So there is also a movement from the south to the north in the Eurasian continent of Chinese, and again getting close to an area that is at the same time getting close to the Western Hemisphere, because from the Arctic you can, in the next decade, do some movements. So I think to maintain the status quo was the worst situation. The status quo had to be changed, and Europe cannot do it because European Union, as we know, is blocked by its own, bureaucratic process and postmodern, integration that is trying to create as much as possible a respect of the international law, a respect of the rule of law, while the others, as I said, in a great power competition, while the others, they are not respecting this law, and you are respecting this law, you are already starting from a losing position. So it's going to be also, let's say, a big rush for Europe, as we saw recently. The reaction has been just sending few dozens of people. Germany pulled them back, but it's been a reaction that shows that Europe is start to have a common defense and deterrence approach, and this is the base for the future defense integration, because that's what we are talking here about. Here we are talking about NATO still exists, but US wants Europe to take the lead, not only buy weapons, more weapons and spend more, but to take the lead in the defense of the European continent. And that's what the European Union has to do and is going to do. But we need to do it faster than slower.
Right. Well, Maurizio, you raised two really valid points. First, of course, you spoke about, you opened up with the global warming context and why the Arctic is important. And second, you spoke about how Russia and China are working together to expand their influence in the Arctic region. And I was doing research as well on this. And since the Russia Ukraine war began in February 2022, Russia has created between 19 to 21 military stations close to the Arctic. So, yes, the Russian footprint is increasing northerly, and they're getting support from China. Now, I want to know is, okay, even if Greenland is transferred to the United States, I mean, why can't Greenland just be a part of Denmark? Denmark is a NATO member. Why can't the US just have more military presence over there?
Well, that's debatable because, again, the foreign policy of Trump is transactional, and this means that United States has been protecting European continent for 80 years, but now is the moment of Europe to take care about themselves, right? To come to an age. And again, as I said earlier, with the Golden Dome or with the presence of US, again, there will be the protection of US by US of the European continent. And what US get from European continent? Nothing, apart, okay, buying some weapons, but that's not the case. That's not the most important thing, because the only time that Article 5, for example, was called was after the 9/11 attacks, and the European people, they lost their lives in Afghanistan, so they helped United States in protection of the United States. But when Trump says, if something happened to us, let's say an invasion, missiles, is the European Union able to make the collective defense? No, because we don't have the means and needed the united political will to do it. So, United States has 35,000 troops in Germany, besides in Japan or South Korea, many more. But how can we move from Europe, thousands of troops quickly to US to protect them from an Arctic invasion or whatever? It's impossible. So that's the reason why NATO is okay, is an important alliance, but to have the military bases and also the, as I said earlier, some advantage on the resources, because you pay for something, because for example, the Golden Dome is going to cost a lot, but you need to get also transactional something back. And we know that this is also a question of security, national security, because if we are not we are not going to get those resources, Russia and China are going to get those resources, because Europe has not the means, the financial means to invest, because to get those resources is very expensive. It's under the ice. The ice is melting gradually, but there is 2/3 of Greenland still under the ice. So the US has the technological advantage, the financial availability to also fight the energy warfare with Russia and China, because we are talking about energy warfare, not only missile defense, but energy warfare with this conquering of the new resources. And so that's the reason why, as I said, it's better to have a US presence than a very short, small Danish presence, because we cannot compare Denmark with the United States. Plus, here we are talking about some, Denmark had some colonial result with Greenland, but Greenland, the territory, is part of the North American hemisphere, the North American continent geographically. So it makes also sense geographically to have a presence of Greenland, I mean, as an autonomous region, because these people are anyway 50,000, indigenous people. They can have autonomy, but for the protection, there is no comparison from the ability and to compete in the security environment and in an energy warfare between the US and the small European country, or the European countries in themselves altogether, which are not yet a power. They are becoming a global power, but they are not yet. Maybe it will take 20 years or more. And in the meantime, the Russia and China will have to already taken over Greenland in a way or in another. I mean, with the threat or with the presence.
Right. Well, Maurizio, you're a reservist in the Italian Navy. You are part of Italy is a strong member and part of NATO. I'm sure you interact with other military personnel who are from NATO. Give us an understanding of how the Europeans are reading this. How are they? How are Europeans looking at this new American intention towards Greenland? Is there debate over it? Are people unhappy? Are some people accepting it?
Yes, I mean, I think there was a few years ago an economist titled that Trump was one of the founders of the future final European Union final integration, because we are getting closer, we are coalescing, because when you have an external threat, there is an internal, unity.
Mhm.
I mean, there is someone, as usual, that is more on the edge, like the Gaza peace team where Hungary is present, as usual. But there is a unity. But the point here is not to have unity. We show that unity also against Russia when Russia increased the hybrid warfare against us, the shadow and the gray operations, etc., etc. We are not able to weaken our unity. But here is more than unity. We need a strategic foresight, the understanding of the future decades. That in the military in the US they do more because they do military research. They invest in military research for technology, but also for grand strategy, for strategic understanding. And we don't invest so much in this. And so the research and development will have to be developed more here. And I think, yes, Europeans, they are reacting in a good way. Now we are finding an agreement, and they will again be thankful, as I said, in the next decades of the presence of US on this land stronger, and to contain the expansion of these dictatorial regimes in the future.
Okay, so what do you predict? How can this go down? How can this Greenland deal happen? Do you think eventually Denmark is going to cave and they'll be willing to sell it, or do you think it'll be like given to the US on lease, um, the way Mauritius has given Diego Garcia to the UK on lease? Do you think something like this of an agreement is going to be agreed upon between, of course, Denmark and the US, but also EU and the US?
I think, yes, that could be a possibility. There are different possibilities. Now they are going to propose, I think, something.
Mhm.
It's not clear what was the agreement between NATO and the US, between Rutte that spoke with Trump in Davos. There are some economic exchange on, someone spoke about F-35s and resources to US, etc., etc. But there is a meeting that has to come out between Denmark and NATO and US and Greenland, because the most important thing here are the people of Greenland. So more than lease or whatever, if they prefer to have a protection and the presence and also economic investment
Hmm.
from the businesses of US, then Europe, that will be the best solution. And we hope for the best for the people of Greenland, and in general for the Western democracies that have to coalesce again temporarily, maybe in a different way, but in the long term, we will be anyway an alliance based on principle. That's what it makes difference with the alliances in Asia. And there are also other regions that will be connected, because the Arctic is now, but then in the future we will have also the Antarctic because of climate change. That will be another area of interest where the great power competition will come, and the space also for the resources on the moon or whatever. So there are many changes that are happening in this period, and is a moment of uh, where the European Union has to show a political will and also strategic long-term vision to understand where we have to go to become finally the great power that help US to win this competition with the dictatorial regimes in the on the planet.
Right. Well, Maurizio, let's say that this does eventually happen, and the U.S. does get control of Greenland under the premise of not just American national security, but overall larger NATO and European security as well. who's going to stop Russia and China from doing the same with its allies? And I mean, we're just going to end. We're staring at a stage where the big powers are looking at increasing their territory, shifting their borders, whether it's through money, the way the United States is proposing. Maybe Russia and China have a different approach, but the outcome is the same. What's gonna happen then?
Well, there is an important thing here to say that the planet Earth is two-thirds covered by water. So who control the seas, control the rest. Now, China cannot do it, and because they don't have the beans. Russia has the geographical extensions, and also the ships. And as you know, Russia has also the so-called shadow fleet, the dark fleet, using ships, old tankers, to keep doing the oil smuggling and getting the money and the energy for its own war. But in the long term, if this area, the Arctic area, is controlled more by the West, it will be difficult for China to bring, what they wanted to bring, fooling the Europeans with the money, because that's what was the plan of Xi Jinping, to create investment economically, and Russia more militarily in the Arctic, to take over the area, and from there, in the grand strategy of their vision, to be able to project power, to weaken our alliance and to divide our alliance coming from the north of Atlantic. But they will not be able to do that, thanks, as I said, to the grand strategy thinking of US. So in the long term, I think we will be able to contain this risk of escalation with the dictatorial regimes of Asia.
Right, Maurizio. Sorry, Maurizio. Very quickly before we end this, so if Denmark does go through with this, and Trump does get Greenland, can we expect other NATO members, other European members, to have similar deals with the United States under the premise of national security? For example, can we see Greece giving up some islands to the US in order for protection?
Well, everything is open when you have a world that is interconnected with a great power competition. Now, this is a different case because it's is affected by the climate change, by the, as I said, the global warming, and is a region that had already autonomous status from a state like Denmark. Is a region that is a gigantic island, 2 million square kilometers, with the probably 1/4 of all the world resources under his land. So it's a different cat, let's say. But everything is possible. We have, in the years, we have seen the desire of countries to join the Alliance of Freedom, the NATO alliance, gradually. And maybe some countries of NATO could say, okay, why don't we use the support of US in a stronger way? But I don't think it's going in that direction. The direction where European Union is going is to have a more integrated and defense union that will make finally European Union come to an age and be able to protect themselves, but also to still collaborate with the United States.
Perfect. Wonderful, Maurizio. These were some valuable and amazing insights, and thank you very much for speaking to Fair Observer and for talking about how important this is and how it could actually change what the future holds for the Arctic region, because things are changing rapidly, and the great power competition that you spoke about between the US and Russia and China is increasingly becoming more volatile. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.